Hello, everybody. Welcome to Making Housing Happen 101. My name is Anthony Manousis, and I'm co-founder of MHCH. I'm also coordinator of the Affordable Supportive Housing Advocates team. Today, I'll be explaining how we do our housing justice work and our faith-rooted approach to advocacy, and I hope that some of you will decide to join us in our work. In this module, you'll learn about our 7-step process to make affordable housing happen, as well as the 6 core values of MHCH. First, we seek to address root causes of the homeless crisis and restore housing justice at the local level through long-term solutions. We practice collaboration and accountability in a spirit of community within our teams, our meetings, and our city. We value integrity. We value education that empowers and transforms. We value integration socially, economically, racially, ethnically, and we value being faith-rooted, each of us operating from our own faith perspective and so pursuing justice in a spirit of respect for each other, as well as love for our city, and especially for the most vulnerable. We'll talk more about these values later, but I'd like to start by explaining why advocacy is needed. First of all, the state requires that cities plan for affordable housing, but they aren't required to actually build it. Our faith-rooted approach has influenced local decision makers and led to hundreds of units of affordable housing being built in Pasadena and beyond. For example, this city-owned lot called Heritage Square South was vacant for decades. It was purchased with HUD money for affordable housing, but for political reasons was left vacant. Finally, in 2018, Councilmember John Kennedy brought it up for discussion at the council and with the community, and the community clearly wanted it to be used for affordable housing, but some members of the council didn't. So we launched a 9-month campaign. We had prayer vigils at the site. We met with elected officials. We gathered over 1,000 signatures. We met with neighbors. And even some of us slept overnight at the site with our homeless neighbors to dramatize the situation. So finally, after all of this, our city council approved this project in December of 2018 when we filled the city council chambers with supporters. So now, 69 units of supportive housing for seniors is in the process of being built right here at Heritage Square. This is a rendering, and it will be complete at the end of this year. There was also a vacant lot next to City Hall, and it was vacant for decades. So we launched another campaign for 9 months. That seems to be the gestation period for our advocacy work sometimes. We met every Monday when council met. We had religious leaders and churches involved, and we met with elected officials and spoke at council meetings. And finally, after 9 months, they approved this 98-unit project. It's going to be beautiful, right next to our magnificent City Hall, and it'll be an example that other cities will take to heart, showing that affordable housing is not something to be tucked away in some obscure part of the city, but it's right in the heart of Pasadena. So we're excited about this project, which just is going through design review. So what is the process for doing advocacy? First, you have to build a team. You have to research the issue. You have to prioritize. You have to build consensus. You have to meet one-on-one with elected officials and decision makers, and you bring crowds to public meetings. And remember, justice is eternal vigilance. Once something is passed, you have to make sure that it's actually implemented. So decisions on policy and programs are made within teams by voting and consensus. What are the essential elements of a good team? Commitment, trust, everyone using their strengths, everyone valued and heard, all ideas considered, and then we have fun and celebrate when we win. We have levels of membership that allow everyone to participate at their own level of commitment. You can be a team member, a volunteer, a liaison to your church or organization. We're open to whatever you feel led to do. The second step in our process is doing research. We write a fact sheet on the issues, talking points, letters to public officials. We identify partners, create a learning community via email and in-person meetings to fine-tune our points and our messages to be sure we're on the same page. We research issues thoroughly and accurately. We often know more than city officials. We compare our policies with other cities and neighborhoods. We research the decision maker's background and seek one-on-one meetings to discern where they stand on the issue, then adjust our message and talking points accordingly. Thirdly, we have to prioritize. What is needed is not always first. Rent control was needed for decades, but only recently was the timing right to mobilize public support. What's on the city schedule? The city has something called the housing element, which we helped to strengthen with a coalition we put together called the Affordable Housing Coalition of Pasadena. This housing element has dates and deadlines for affordable housing policy initiatives, but we have to monitor the city to make sure that they actually implement what's in this housing element. So what's up next and what is overdue? Finally, we have to evaluate our capacity. Do we have enough committed people to sustain a campaign, which could last for many months or years? Fourthly, we build consensus. This is an important part of our process. We were actually birthed at the American Friends Service Committee office, which is a Quaker organization. And like the Quakers, we believe it's worthwhile to wait till we're all on the same page. Unity is powerful and consistent messaging is powerful. Fifthly, we meet one-on-one with decision makers. Scheduling relational meetings can be difficult, but it's essential. We seek always to have someone from the council persons or commissioner's district present. Here we see Dr. Walton, who is an elder in a church on North Fair Oaks, which is located in the same district as Council Member Tyrone Hampton, shown here with one of his constituents. So we try to learn all we can about the city official before the meeting. We plan an agenda for these one-on-ones. And why do you think it's important to have these one-on-ones in this way? Well, there are many reasons, but I think one of the most important is that we are aiming for long-term relationships. We're not just trying to pass one policy. We're trying to transform our city and make it a place where there's affordable housing for everyone. And that's a long-term strategy. And that's why it's important that we have these one-on-one meetings and build these relationships. When we do meet, we adopt a humble posture of learning as opposed to a more confrontational approach. However, we're not shy about our positions, even if they're opposed. When needed, like the Old Testament prophets and Jesus, we're open to confrontation when appropriate. And by the way, sometimes children are the best advocates. Shown here with former Mayor Tornick are two teenagers who are very influential. You can see how much he appreciates them. It's important that we bring crowds to our gatherings. We often fill up the city council chamber. Why are they important? For two reasons. They demonstrate strong support for an issue, and it builds the beloved community. Who should be at public meetings and our actions? Anyone, especially those who have a story to tell, those experiencing homelessness, and those struggling to keep a roof over their heads. Who should speak at public meetings? Those whom decision makers will value and listen to, new faces, those in their district, those with stories to tell, and stakeholders with clout. Stories matter at public meetings. In public meetings, the stories of those who've been affected by the housing crisis and stories of those who've been helped by the policies must be told. When we identify our stories and share them, we're all transformed, just as Jesus told stories that are transformational to this day. Great story here is Dorothy Edwards. She lived in a home she dug out of the 210 embankment for 17 years, and today she's on the National Board for Supportive housing, helping others like herself. What turned her life around was getting into a supportive housing that helped her to get what she needed to kick her drug habit and to stabilize her life. And now she's such an amazing spokesperson for supportive housing. By the way, we have trainings on how to tell our stories and how to help others tell theirs. We also produce videos of people with lived experience of homelessness or who've been displaced from their homes so that others can see their stories and be moved to take action. So showing up makes all the difference. Besides showing up at the City Council, the Planning Commission, Economic Development Subcommittee of the City Council, other public meetings, we also have affordable housing tours, prayer vigils, public educational sessions, such as with the Housing Department. And all of these public meetings help to build community and help us to move the needle towards affordable housing. Showing up makes it newsworthy. Drawing crowds at this public event at City Hall made the papers. Public awareness was the goal of this action, and it was accomplished. Support for rezoning religious land garnered widespread public support and was agendized and approved by the City Council. So what happens after our issue is passed? What is the timetable for it to happen? Even though the ADU ordinance was passed in 2017, it took until 2018 for the staff to have the protocols ready for the public. We continued our vigilance until the Housing Department came up with an award-winning affordable ADU pilot program, which we are very proud of. So we went from a city where the City Council was totally opposed to ADUs and made it almost impossible to the point where now our city embraces ADUs. By the way, these are accessory dwelling units, otherwise known as granny flats. And they're an important part of what's called naturally occurring affordable housing. So let's do a pop quiz, okay? Which of the following is a way to build a good team? Housing element is such a serious issue, it's best not to make sure no fun is involved. Give jobs to people that aren't their strengths and to challenge them. Actively listen to each person and value what they say. If you said B, you are correct. Which is not a good practice for conducting research. Listen to those most in need. Carefully listen to decision makers and know their background. Find out what other cities are doing and adopt good practices. Argue with decision makers and make sure to point out their faults in public. Yes, D is definitely a bad practice. You always want to say nice things and thank your public officials because that's ultimately how you build a strong relationship. How do we go about bringing crowds to public meetings when needed? Have liaison members who can reach out to their churches, invite those experiencing homelessness, those now housed to tell their stories, invite wealthy residents to support the cause as well as business owners, telling how they can't pay their employees enough to live nearby. Trick people into attending by telling them there'll be a 5-course meal before the council meeting. Well, D is, of course, the right answer. I wish we could afford to buy a 5-course meal for everybody. Sometimes we buy pizza, but mostly we just invite people and they come. Okay, so let's move on to core values. We are a value-driven organization, faith-rooted, as I said earlier. So our values are critically important. And we, first of all, value getting to root causes. We seek to address root cause of the housing crisis and restore housing justice at the local level through long-term solutions. This means asking why there's so many people experiencing homelessness in our community. Why is the cost of housing unattainable? And what can we do about it? We value collaboration and accountability. We seek to hear and affirm each other where we can, always seeking understanding and common ground, even with those whose ideas we oppose. We have a network of over 20 churches and have partnered with over 40 community organizations, including the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, the oldest association of African American pastors in our area, and the Clergy Community Coalition, consisting of over 70 churches. And our collaborative approach is what gives us the clout needed to influence our public officials. So we value integrity. We persevere in accurate and careful community-based research to build credibility. We seek to create a safe environment whereby all can share their perspectives with honesty, courage, and love. We seek to resolve conflicts and keep our word. We speak truth to those in power. So our integrity is really gold. It's what gives us credibility in the city, and we work hard to maintain our credibility and our integrity. We value education that empowers and transforms us and society. We equip ourselves and others by starting with our own stories and the stories of those most affected by the housing crisis. This informs our agendas and education. We also seek to understand God's story. What does the Bible say about housing and land? And this is a very important part of our work because we reach out to churches and they want to understand the connection between housing justice and the Bible. We educate and train by practicing within a pedagogy that honors cycles of research, action, and reflection. Community-based research, action, and reflection. After Mayor Tornick heard our ideas about foregoing a $20,000 impact fee of ADUs are built for families, and he added his own, and this became policy. So that's very important that we reflect on what we've done and we see what works, and then we try to move forward. We also value integration. We integrate our own stories with policy initiatives that restore justice, undo segregation and exclusion. In so doing, we transform our own souls and the soul of the city towards housing justice. Unfortunately, Sunday morning is still the most segregated hour of the week, but we hope to bring churches together, conservative, liberal, all kinds of churches, synagogues, mosques. We want to bring our religious community together and work for the common good to end homelessness and address our housing crisis. So good housing policy creates inclusive communities that integrate rather than segregate. Finally, we value faith integration, being faith-rooted. Each of us operates from our own faith perspective and pursues justice in the spirit of respect for each other, love for a city, especially the most vulnerable. All are welcome, even those, including those without a religious faith. We feel everyone reflects God's image. What would a policy look like where everyone is valued and seen as precious? So we see that as one of our goals, to be an organization that primarily reaches out to people of faith, but also people of conscience, and affirms that everyone is valuable. We had prayer vigils at Heritage Square South, where Christians, Jews, and Muslims attended, and similarly at the Civic Center. And we feel that God has answered our prayers. So I'm going to close with that. We have another quiz. Which of the following is not a core value? Addressing root causes, collaboration, accountability, integrity, education that empowers and transforms, or segregation? And the answer is E. Which of these is not in line with MHCH's core values? We seek to determine the root causes of a problem, not just symptoms. When we find our voice and support of a group to speak with love and truth to decision makers, we experience the transformation of our soul and the soul of the city. Reflection is essentially a plan for the next action in order to secure victory. Protecting single-family neighborhoods. Well, the correct answer is D. We're not so excited about protecting single-family neighborhoods. That's often a catchword for keeping multifamily housing and people of color out of areas that are predominantly white and middle class. So I want to thank you for listening to this MHCH 101 session. And to learn more, please go to our website at makinghousinghappen.org. And if you feel so led, please feel free to make a donation. We can certainly use your support, and we appreciate that you're involved. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop share and end this session. Again, thank you so much for joining us.